Thank you, and good morning. And it is a good morning to be alive, let me tell you. As I share my story, that will make even more sense to you. No longer asking, Terry now was calling 911. By now, Jill and Debbie had come off the courts, and I could hear them saying that someone needed to call my husband. They were rummaging through my purse, looking for my cell phone, and I laid there thinking, swell. Now I don't only admit that I'm tennis impaired, but I'm technology impaired because I have no phone numbers programmed into my cell phone. So one breath at a time, I gave them my husband's phone number. We could hear the sirens off in the distance, but they didn't seem to be getting any closer. And Debbie ran to the corner to flag them down as soon as she could see them. Jill remained with me, holding my legs according to the instruction of the dispatcher. Terry then phoned to activate the prayer chain. They were all praying for me, only Jill's prayer took on the form of a song. She sang, "What a friend we have in Jesus. What a friend we have in Jesus." You see, the stress of the moment was causing her to forget the next line in the song. Normally I would jump in and help, but I had a refrain of my own going, which was, "Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord." Jeff Peterson, the paramedic, approached me from my left and strapped my arm to something, I don't know what. And right away he began asking me all sorts of questions. You know how they do to determine your level of consciousness. He asked me questions like, what is the day of the week? What is your age? What city are we in? What is your weight? That's the only time I ever admitted to my weight in public, and I'm told that my condition was changing so rapidly that Captain Seekins could barely write it down according to the progression. Now, for those of you who are medically oriented, what they witnessed and what I experienced is a sudden cardiac arrest that originated in the upper chambers of my heart. And the particular documentation reveals that it began with a sinus ventricular tachycardia, followed by a ventricular tachycardia, then followed by a ventricular fibrillation. Now, for the rest of us who don't know what in the world that means, it was bad. It was real bad. Well, I was still answering Jeff Peterson's questions when he asked me, "Are you feeling kind of funny?" I thought, what kind of a question is that at a time like this? Aren't you the paramedic? And about that time I completed that thought, I was gone. I died. Well, I didn't know it, but Jeff asked that question because the EKG showed that my heart had already stopped. But I was still talking. Considering I'm a public speaker, I think that's a riot. Because you see, for me, from the moment that I was gone, I was no longer in my body. I went to a whole new dimension. It was an incredibly peaceful place. It was dark, but not frightening dark. It was more of a, charcoal gray dark or warm brown dark. And it was incredibly peaceful. I liken it to what it might be to be in the mother's womb. I felt like I was in the center of a place where I was completely cared for. And according to my faith, I believe that I was in the center of God's sovereign care. There was a thin white light off in the distance, but it didn't beckon me, and that was perfectly fine because I was very happy right where I was. Well, Debbie told me that she was very sensitive to the fact that they had to cut off my top, and she considered it a personal moment for me, so she turned her back to the scene, but she continued to pray for me. Wasn't that nice? And she later told me that she could hear the men clanking equipment, and the next thing she heard was someone yell, "Clear!" And then there was the sound of the defibrillators activating 200 joules of power through my body. The next thing she heard was someone yell, "Bag her!" And she was incensed. She thought, "You can't do that. You can't give up on her now. You've hardly worked on her." And she turns around and she looks and she sees an oxygen bag on my face. You know she was thinking body bag. And she admits to watching too many of those ER-type shows. Well, my heart began beating again. And that's when I could hear my name being called. Pam! Pam, are you with us? Pam, come back. I could feel myself being drawn. And when I opened my eyes, I saw the face of a black man knelt over me. And beyond that, I saw the sky and the clouds. And I thought, Jesus is black. Now, my belief is that humanity is made in God's image, so Jesus is every color. And about this time, I also realized that a crowd of onlookers had gathered, and I sensed that my chest was bare. Am I naked? The men were busy. They didn't bother to answer my question. So I asked again, am I naked? They still didn't answer me. I asked a third time, and finally Greg bends down into my ear and he says, Pam, if that's all we have to worry about, it's been a good day. Not from my perspective. My hands are like this. They're strapped. I can't even do this. Many patients whose heart stops suffer varying degrees of brain damage for every moment that they are gone. But contrary to what my children say, I have no brain damage. And miraculously, neither do I have any resulting heart damage. When I first arrived, we all stood there just in a circle, kind of looking at each other, smiling. I mean, we really looked sort of goofy, you know, but there was an apparent bond between us. Jeff was asking questions, you know, being the paramedic, he wanted to know what the doctors diagnosed, and at one point he asked me, did the doctor say you had a Jean-Zon? Whatever it was sounded very French. But before I could answer, he says, well, no, never mind. You're too old for that. We continued visiting, and a few moments later, Jeff then adds, by the way, Pam, I'm the one who had to cut your top off, and you really didn't like that. And I said, no, I didn't. And then I guess, feeling a need to be very captainly, Glenn Seekins steps up and he says, Pam, you have to understand. We're professionals, and under the circumstances, it really wasn't all that memorable. I turned to my lady friend who drove me there. I said, swell, first they tell me I'm too old, then they say I'm not all that memorable. When it came time to leave, Captain Seekins looked me in the face and he said, we don't have many sudden cardiac arrest victims who are able to come back and see us again, let alone say thank you. I know the guys were feeling very awkward to be thanked at all because as far as they're concerned, they were just doing their job. And then Glenn said, your coming to see us, Pam, has just made our day. And I looked back at Glenn. I said, Glenn, don't you understand? Your coming to see me has made the rest of my life. Considering my experience, it's my sincere desire to bless your heart. And I hope to see you later today at my table so that together we can increase awareness and help women everywhere become aware. And for those of you who are registered for the Crystal Cathedral's International Women's Conference, I hope to see you tomorrow at my workshop, where I will be sharing a bit more of my story with the hopes of encouraging others not to take life for granted. Because I certainly know it can be taken from us that fast. Instead, we want to be engaged in life and make a difference. And I hope that by my blessing your heart, I've made something of a difference in your life. Thank you.